Now that you've watched the Chapter 1 Part 1 and Chapter 1 Part 2 video on the chapters, let's go ahead and take some close notes to prepare for today's lesson. We're just going to review some key terms so that we'll understand what we're doing in today's lesson. Describe means to say, go ahead and write this in, what someone or something is like. A great tool to describe our two main characters is to use a thinking map. The best thinking map to use to describe characters is a bubble map, otherwise known as a describing map. We call it a describing map because that's what it does. The bubble map describes people or things. In a bubble map, we use adjectives. Adjectives are words we use to describe things, or character traits to say what the character is like. In other words, to describe the character. When we compare or contrast two people or two things, the best map to use is a double bubble map. We'll be using both of these types of maps today. Alright, let's go ahead and first look at describing Lupita. Lupita is our main character, and she's the title character of the book. So let's go ahead and first we want to create a bubble map to describe her. We're going to use as many adjectives and character traits as possible. And then if you notice that asterisk, it says, don't forget to cite textual evidence to support your thinking. That means we actually need to find the quote and the page number in the book that supports the way that we describe Lupita. So let's start by drawing our double bubble map. I'm going to put a circle in the center of my paper, and since Lupita is the person we're describing first, I'm going to write in Lupita. Okay, then we want to, each time we come up with an adjective or a character trait, we're going to draw a line and a bubble. So let's go ahead and think of some ways to describe Lupita. Go ahead and think about some right now, and then in just a minute I will give you some of the character traits that I found about Lupita. If you want to hit pause, you can. If you want to just start thinking right now and writing some things down, you may do that as well. Okay, one way that the book describes Lupita is if you remember, you should still have your book out too. If you remember on page 9, when we first meet Lupita, she is, and I have my book right here, she is described as the thin-legged 13-year-old. So we know that she's a teenager, and it says moved swiftly around the side of the building. So we know that she's thin and can move. So we can see that on page 9, we can describe Lupita as athletic. And I'm going to put page 9 to show where I got my information. Another character trait that Lupita shows us in the book, on several pages actually, is how responsible she is. She goes to help her mom at the hotel. That's on page 10. So helping is also that could be another character trait, helpful. And again, that's on page 10 when she goes to the hotel to help her mom. She's responsible because she's earning money for the family. Okay, and if you look in your book on page, let's see, it says right here on page 14 that when she usually came home from running errands for Ensenada shopkeepers for a few centavos, she stopped to admire her flowers. So she was gardening, trying to make her home look good. She went to help her mom, and she runs errands to earn money for the family. So all of these things show us that Lupita is responsible. So I'm going to put page 14. We could also put page 10 if we wanted to quote how she helps her mom also after she's done with her errands. Okay. Another thing that we see, another character trait that the book actually says is that Lupita, when she finds out that her mom isn't working there, that day she becomes very frightened. I believe it says, let's see, where she finds out that her mom isn't working there. It says she became filled with fright. I can't seem to find it right now. But I believe it's on page 12. Oh, and right here where it says anxiously. Lupita asked anxiously. So let's go ahead and put anxiously. That means that she was worried. And that is on page 12. You can see that I have 5 character traits. I'm going to leave 1 for you to complete on your own once you get to independent practice. If you turn your lesson plan to independent practice, you'll see that I gave you a word bank for Lupita. So you're going to look through this word bank and decide which one of these would be another good way to describe Lupita. So you're going to choose one of these words for independent practice and write it in on the Lupita describing map right here. And please remember to quote the page number that supports why you think that's one of her character traits. Okay, excellent. Let's go ahead and look at Salvador. We also want to describe Salvador. So again, I'm going to create a describing map or a bubble map by drawing a circle. It's not really a circle, but it's close enough, right? And we're going to put Salvador in the center. Okay, so the book describes Salvador in lots of different ways. So we want to look and see what are some of his character traits that we learn already in the first chapter of Lupita Manana. Let's go ahead and look back to our book. I do know that when Lupita first comes to tell Salvador that he needs to come home, she says there's a group of boys, and then there's one boy. She gestures, it says, for a moment, to gesture to a sulky-looking black-haired boy. Okay, sulky means like you're feeling sorry for yourself. So we'll put he's sulking, right? The book actually says that, and that is on page 13. Remember, we want to quote our evidence. So we want to cite our evidence, which is that sentence on page 13. Okay, another way that on page 13 Salvador is described is when he finds out that Captain Ortega came. It says that Salvador was really worried, and then Lupita says she knew why he was worried. Okay, so we're going to put that he was worried. That's another way to describe him, and that is also on page 13. So I'm going to cite page 13 right in my bubble to describe Salvador. All right, looking into the chapter, there's a really good description of Salvador towards the end on page 18, where it says that Salvador is boastful. It says boast, strut, and smoke. That was all they did. So first of all, Salvador is not out earning money like Lupita is. So we could describe Salvador as lazy, right? Because he doesn't work, or we could say he's uneducated because he's not working. And that word boastful, that means prideful. So we're going to say prideful. And these are both from page 18. Yeah, so I'm going to cite it from page 18. Okay. Again, I'm going to leave one blank where you need to come back and fill in the blank during direct instruction. You need to find one more character trait on your own to describe Salvador. Make sure you quote the page number where that's from. And if you look in direct instruction, independent practice, then you'll see there's also a word bank to describe Salvador. So you're going to choose at least one more of these words, these character traits to describe Salvador, and you need to add that to his character trait map, his describing map, excuse me. Okay, what we're going to do now is move on to comparing and contrasting Lupita and Salvador using a double bubble map. So we want to find as many similarities and differences as possible. And we don't want to forget to cite textual evidence to support our thinking. So because the double bubble map is kind of wide, I'm actually going to turn my paper over this way, the long way, so that I can have room to draw my double bubble map. So I'm going to draw my map first, and I'm going to start by doing one circle for Lupita, one circle for Salvador. I'm going to make sure there's a little bit of space in between so I can put their similarities right here, and their differences are going to go on the outside. So I'm going to write Lupita here and Salvador here. Okay, and then I'm going to want to put at least 3 ways they're similar and 3 ways they're different. Okay, so let's go ahead and make sure you draw your map, and then we want to connect those to the people they're describing, right? So these are all going to be 3 ways Lupita is different. These are going to be 3 ways Lupita is similar to Salvador. So Salvador is also going to go to these 3 because these are the ways they're similar. They both will have these character traits, and then only Salvador will have these character traits on the outside, and only Lupita will have these character traits. So your double bubble map should look like this right now with Lupita and Salvador. Okay, so I'm going to look back in my maps, and you can flip back if you need to really quickly to see how we described Salvador and how we described Lupita, to think about some ways that they're similar and some ways that they're different. Okay, so I see right away a lot of ways they're different, but one thing that I noticed too is a way that they're similar. So remember I said that word anxiously means that that she's worried, and I see that Salvador is also worried. So I'm going to put in the middle a similarity is that they both worry, right? They're both worried people. So, and that was on page 12 and page 13. Okay, and then something else from the book that's similar is when they describe where they live. In the end, they talk about how poor they are. So on page 19, we can see that they say everyone who lived on the hillside around them was poor, some poorer than they. So we know that they are both very poor. So I'm going to put poor in the middle. That's one way they're similar. And I'm going to cite it. It's on page 19. Okay. Try to think of one other way that they're both similar. Maybe something from the book that we haven't looked at yet. Maybe something about their family. Something that they have in common. What's one more way that they are similar? Okay. For Lupita, I'm going to look back at my maps, and I have them side by side, but you probably have to flip back to them. I can see that Lupita is actually very helpful, whereas her brother is not helpful, right? He's not helpful, but he is actually prideful. So he has a lot of pride, but he doesn't help people. So I'm going to put for Lupita that she's helpful, right? And that's on page 10. And then, but Salvador is prideful, right? He doesn't help people, he just boasts. And that is on page number 18. Okay. Another difference that you can write in between Lupita and Salvador is Lupita is responsible, but Salvador is lazy. Responsible is on page 14, lazy is on page 18. Go ahead and add one more character trait independently and then do your exit slip and you'll be ready to go. You should now have filled in all of the bubbles in the maps, and go ahead and start your exit slip by answering the multiple choice questions with the best possible answer.